have in this world is my balls and my word. And I don't break them for no one. Do you understand?
It's not personal. It's strictly business.
Will you shut the fuck up and listen to me? Just listen to me!
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
Hey, fuck you, man! Who put this thing together? Me! That's who! Who do I trust? Me!
This is the story of a young Italian-American who escaped from the Bronx, was saved by theater, and became one of the greatest actors of his generation. It's the story of an actor with a magnetic gaze and an explosive physicality who came to the fore in films of the 1970s. He was the embodiment of New York, with its dark side and its demons. It's the story of a star who made one big movie after another, drowned in work and alcohol, and ended up losing himself before coming to terms with success. This is the story of Al Pacino. In 1970, New York was in the middle of a heroin epidemic. Tens of thousands of junkies roamed the streets in search of their next fix. In Manhattan, most heroin trafficking took place at the intersection of Broadway and 72nd Street, a small square nicknamed Needle Park, where drug addicts hung out day and night. This is where a film of raw realism was shot, depicting a descent into the hell of addiction. The main role was played by an as yet unknown actor.
I told my brother all about you. My brother Hank? Yeah. He's gonna love you, man. Only better not love you too much, because I'll kick his ass. Listen, you don't have to worry about money either. I got plenty of that. Yeah. I got nothing, man. Hey, yeah, we'll take a little trip. You want to take a trip? You ever been to Philadelphia? Neither have I. All right, just keep going.
From his very first film, he burst onto the screen with his naturalistic style. Pacino was not acting. He was his character.
Merry Christmas.
What are you gonna do with it?
At the end of the filming, he was unable to come out of character. He continued to spend time with the Needle Park junkies and turned down the chance to go and present the film at the 1971 Cannes Film Festival. He didn't feel at home out of New York. He would trawl all the neighborhoods, crossing into some of the most dangerous areas.
South Bronx. My father and mother divorced, and I remember back then living with my grandmother and grandfather and my mother. My mother was difficult, but she was also great.
Al Pacino had grown up in an apartment that was too small, brought up by a single mother who worked as a cinema usher. He started going to the movies with her as early as 4 years old. When he got back home, he would reenact the film in front of the mirror.
Lost Weekend's a movie that starred Ray Milland. He's an alcoholic and he hid the bottle somewhere. And he goes into a frantic search for it. And I would perform it. My mother was always dragging me out saying, show these people the Lost Weekend, do the Lost Weekend for them. And I would do the Lost Weekend, and then they'd be laughing. And I never understood why they were laughing.
Al started smoking at the age of 9 and drinking at 13. He's quoted as saying, "As far back as I can remember, drinking and smoking grass were a part of my life." His two best friends, with whom he spent many hours out in the streets of the Bronx, fell into hard drugs. They didn't survive. As for Pacino, he discovered theater in a local playhouse, and he kept going to the movies. When he was 16, he saw Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront. He was overwhelmed by Brando's style of acting, which was truer, more raw, and more powerful than anything else seen in Hollywood at the time.
Hey, Friendly! John Friendly, come out of there! Come on out of there! You take the good goods away and the kickbacks and the shakedown cabbage and the pistoleros, and you're nothing.
It was a revelation. It was a breakthrough. His acting on screen was different than anything we'd all seen. So that's how it impacted me.
From then on, Al dreamt of becoming an actor. He quit high school and went to live in Manhattan, taking on a series of odd jobs. He saved up enough money to pay for acting classes, became enthused by experimental theater, and started acting in Greenwich Village cafes.
And what happened is, during the play, I felt something go through me, as though I was able to speak from myself. I was kind of born there in a way. And I knew then, at that point, that this is what I'm gonna do with my life. It didn't matter that I was famous, that I had money, that I was good or bad. What mattered is that I wanna do this.
At 26, on his second attempt, he got into the Actors Studio, the legendary New York theater school where James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, and Marlon Brando had trained. At the Actors Studio, Pacino was taught by the great Lee Strasberg, who became not just his mentor, but a surrogate father. Strasberg passed on the tenets of the method, how to become the character and not to play it, by drawing on one's own emotions and inner pain.
I would go to the studio, but I wouldn't go on stage. I wouldn't do anything. And there would be Lee, and finally I did a scene there. And he pronounced my name for the first time. Someone pronounced my name right. They always used to say Pacini or Pacino. He said Pacino, and I thought, okay.
What happened? Well, like I said, I was just out on the town. I was celebrating a car I bought yesterday. I met this girl, see, and we had a couple of drinks. She got to liking me. And she asked me if I'd take her for a ride in my car.
For his first screen appearance, Pacino had a part in an episode of a forgettable TV series. But it was theater where he felt at home and could express himself. The young man from the Bronx would now get high on Shakespeare monologues, working on them alone all day long. In 1968, he acted in Israel Horovitz's play, The Indian Wants the Bronx. He shared the bill with another young actor, John Cazale.
He was like my older brother. He was a bit older than I, a couple of years. So he was that way with me too. Take it easy, he'd say to me, calm down. He was there for me. John was a little ahead, so he was seeing things and able to see things, feel things in a way that's just a little finer.
Even if the general public was unaware of him, Al Pacino's peers began to take notice. For his role in the play, Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie?, he picked up a Tony Award, the most prestigious accolade in New York theater.
Don Corleone. Don Corleone, please.
It's good, huh? It's good.
In the fall of 1970, a director in his 30s, Francis Ford Coppola, was in the middle of preparing his next film, an adaptation of Mario Puzo's bestseller, The Godfather. He only had one actor in mind for the main role, Al Pacino. In order to convince the producers, Coppola made him do some screen tests.
It's lighter, it's fine, but the scene is a serious scene.
Luca Brasi held a revolver against Hallie's head, and my father told Hallie that either his signature or his brains would be on the contract.
Pacino wasn't at all to the liking of the boss of Paramount, who wanted a real star and not a beginner. He thought Pacino was too short and his complexion too dark. He would have preferred an all-American type, like Robert Redford or Ryan O'Neal for the role. Yet since the end of the 60s, less classical-looking actors were making their mark in Hollywood. For example, Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. His success opened the way for other actors considered atypical by the studios. But in fact, Pacino himself wasn't sure he was right for the part of Michael Corleone.
So what did I know? I knew what the studio knew. Why use me in such a, why would I be that part? I mean, come on, there's so many other wonderful actors out there who could do it, and they're well-known, and they're this and that. Even I didn't want me. I didn't think he was right, actually.
Action?
Michael, why are all those people bothering your father on a day like this?
Oh. Well, that's because they know no Sicilian can refuse a request on his daughter's wedding day.
Coppola auditioned other actors, but he was set on Al Pacino for his film.
The story goes...
His insistence paid off, and he got his man.
In 2 weeks.
Pacino threw himself into preparing for his new role. He spent hours walking along the streets of New York thinking about his character. He met up discreetly with members of the New York mob. Some of its leading figures agreed to support the film on condition that the word mafia was never uttered. In the city streets, scores were still being settled, even as the production progressed. Filming got off to a bad start for Pacino. When the producers saw the first dailies, they found his acting lackluster. He was on the verge of being fired.
I just wanted to be replaced. I thought, what am I doing here? This is just not, it's not working. I don't feel wanted or, acting needs confidence. You need a certain amount of feeling people want you there.
In order to help his young protege and give him a chance to make his mark, Coppola decided to change the shooting schedule and move one of the film's key scenes forward, the one where Michael carries out his first murder in a Bronx restaurant.
Michelozzi, tu mi capisci, no? Sei italiano come tuo padre? tuo padre sta male. Quando tu sta meglio, il cambio ti fa un di ognuno e mettiamo tutto a posto. Sti fissaria, si deve finiti.
In just one take, Pacino silenced his critics. His acting would never be questioned again. In The Godfather, he was playing in the same league as his boyhood idol, Marlon Brando. As if the film was staging a symbolic handover between the two actors' studio graduates.
I'll handle it. I told you I can handle it. I'll handle it.
All the glitterati turned up on the evening of the New York premiere. Pacino panicked. Just a few minutes after arriving, he made his escape and went out and got drunk. He was the revelation of the film, which was a huge box office success. But the young actor wasn't ready to deal with the ups and downs of fame. He could have given in to the siren call of commercial films, but instead returned to the art house cinema of Jerry Schatzberg, the director of The Panic in Needle Park.
I'm behind you, two-bit son of a bitch, you! Eat cantaloupe, you belegged rhinoceros!
In Scarecrow, Pacino played a loser, a vagrant hitchhiking across the U.S. alongside an ex-convict, played by Gene Hackman. The actor made use of his small stature and childish looks to embody a character still caught up in childhood, almost as if Al Pacino had refused to grow up.
Frank, what the hell's up? I'm out here now. It's 5 hours. I don't know. I don't know what he said.
He returned to the theater in the winter of 1973. For the first time in his career, he took on a Shakespeare play, Richard III. But the critics would only refer to his status as a young film star and his social origins.
The opening soliloquy is, of course, one of the most beautiful and one of the most musical of them all. Incidentally, why on Saturday night did you do it with a little accent?
You never
Why-
know.
Why did you suddenly say...
Saturday night is my accent night. I'll tell you that.
Now is the winter of our discontent.
I guess I was nervous.
I thought you had gone mafia.
I was nervous. When I get nervous on openings. And I didn't know it was opening until that night. So I was very nervous before it.
Now, you spoke that speech beautifully, resonantly. You were deliberate, you were slow, you got all the melody into it. But I couldn't believe you were saying it in a kind of accent as though it was back to The Godfather or something.
It probably was because I was nervous.
Really?
At the start of the 1970s, the New York police was undergoing an unprecedented crisis. A whistleblower had just drawn attention to widespread corruption within the NYPD, an institution which was racist and rotten to the core. In retaliation, he suffered an assassination attempt.
Police corruption cannot exist unless it is at least tolerated at higher levels in the department.
The true story of Frank Serpico, an Italian-American police officer, became the subject of Al Pacino's next film.
Policeman's first obligation is to be...
I met Frank Serpico. But when I met Frank, I knew there was something I could paint there. There was something that I could sort of serve. I just felt it. He had an earring, long hair, and strange looking, but he had a look in his eye that I thought, there it is.
For the first time, the actor was playing a real-life character. He transformed his physical appearance and spent days on end with the real Frank, to the point where he never got out of character.
You don't implicate people without sufficient evidence.
Now, that's crap, and you know it. Because even a dumb cop like me knows a prosecutor can take a grand jury anywhere it wants to take it. Now, you never led me anywhere near the real problems. Nothing about the bosses, the brass, how corruption like this could exist without anybody knowing about it. Now, a few flunky cops in the Bronx, that's it. None of this shit in Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan.
While you're at it, why don't you mention Kansas City?
Well, the biggest thing since Harry Gross, that's what you said.
All right. Look, Frank, you've got guts, integrity. There's going to be a detective's gold shield in this for you.
Well, that's terrific. That's good. Maybe this is what it's all about. Maybe I should take my gold shield and forget it.
I know you've been through an ordeal, Frank.
I'm a marked man in this department for what?
Serpico came out in December 1973, and the film was a huge success. Pacino's performance, in a film he carried from start to finish, earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
Last tango, Jack Nicholson for The Last Detail.
Al Pacino for Serpico. The winner is...
Jack Lemmon for Save the Night.
Throughout the ceremony, Pacino was seen taking tranquilizers as if they were popcorn. He was in the middle of shooting another film, which rested largely on his shoulders. In The Godfather Part II, Pacino turned his character into a Shakespearean tyrant, whose apparent tranquility was all the more ominous, as it seemed he could explode at any moment. On the shoot itself, the actor had accrued more power. He was paid 20 times more than for the first film, and he was able to influence the casting of the film. He suggested that the character of the old gangster be played by his mentor and father figure, Lee Strasberg.
You're a wise and considerate young man.
And you're a great man, Mr. Ross. There's much I can learn from you.
Whatever I can do to help, Michael.
The film reunited him with Jean Cazale, who was like a brother to him in real life, and pitted him up against another up-and-coming actor who was also a friend.
You're gonna take both of them out on me. You're gonna take them, and you know what they're gonna do to you? And you know what you do when you knock somebody off? You take a gun, you shoot him right up against his fucking head. That's what you do. You get his brains all over your nice new Ivy League suit, Michael. That's what happens.
Like Pacino, Robert De Niro came from the New York Italo-American community and was also trained in method acting at the Actors Studio. But at the release of The Godfather Part II, De Niro was still only a young hopeful, whereas Pacino, who was 3 years older, was already a star, whose name towered over the others. While Pacino was triumphant at the box office, his old neighborhood was sinking into misery. The South Bronx of his childhood was a working-class district. It had now become a vast ghetto, where in order to claim insurance money, landlords set fire to their own buildings, without always warning their tenants before. But in the middle of the 70s, the whole of New York was falling into decay. The city could no longer pay its debts and started each day by counting the murder victims of the night before. Any tourist who was brave enough to visit New York was given a survival guide, in which there were the following recommendations. Never take the subway. Don't go out after 6 p.m. If possible, don't stay in the city. In August 1972, a news item hit the headlines. A homosexual Italian-Polish immigrant from Brooklyn held up a bank so that he could pay for the sex change operation of his lover. The media filmed and photographed the holdup, showing a city on the verge of descending in real time into chaos.
The more visible bank robber is 27-year-old John Wolfowitz, an out-of-work New York City resident and an admitted homosexual who left his wife and 2 children 3 years ago.
An article in Life magazine shortly afterwards described the robber as a dark, thin fellow with the broken-faced good looks of an Al Pacino or a Dustin Hoffman. The article was immediately adapted into a screenplay, and Pacino was offered the role. The actor, who had just finished The Godfather Part 2, was completely wiped out and drinking far more than was reasonable. He turned the part down. His agent, Marty Bregman, insisted that he think again.
Marty Bregman calls me one day and says, "Al, are you sober?" He said, "Just do me a favor as a friend, just read it." And I started reading it, and after I finished, I thought, there is just no way. I mean, this is movies. I mean, these things don't come along. You don't read scripts like this, come on. You gotta do it.
Pacino signed up for what was to become the most electric performance of his early career, totally in sync with the atmosphere of New York at the time.
Nobody's been hurt. Release the hostages. Kiss me, man. What? Kiss me. When I'm being fucked, I like to get kissed a lot.
Come on.
You're a city cop, right? Robbing a bank's a federal offense. They got me on kidnapping, armed robbery. They're gonna bury me, man. I don't want to talk to somebody who's trying to calm me. Get somebody in charge here.
I am in charge
I don't want
here.
to talk to some flunky pig trying to calm me, man.
You don't have to be calling.
What's he doing?
Will you get back over there?
What are you
moving in there for? Will you
What's
get
he
the
doing?
fuck back there?
Huh?
Get back there,
What's
will
he
you?
doing? Look at him with
Come
him.
on, get over there.
Go on back there, man.
Get over there, will you?
He wants to kill me so bad he can taste it.
I'm always gonna kill you.
Attica! Attica!
Will you?
Attica! 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 Attica!
In September 1971, Attica prison inmates had taken dozens of staff hostage in their bid to demand better living conditions. After several days of rioting, the New York State Police were sent in, and a bloodbath ensued. But beyond the social and political context that permeated Dog Day Afternoon, Pacino managed to inject an extraordinary degree of humanity and intensity into his character. He was once again partnered with John Cazale, who Pacino insisted should be in the film, and together, they partly improvised some of the scenes.
Is there any special country you want to go to?
Wyoming.
No, Wyoming. That's not a country. That's all right. I'm gonna take care of it.
Pacino's performance culminated in a telephone scene, a night shoot when the actor was in a state of exhaustion.
I mean, I got all these pressures, and you know about it. You're in that hospital there with all them tubes coming out, and you want that fucking operation, right? You're giving me that shit. Everybody's giving me shit. Everybody needs money, you know what I mean? So, you needed money, I got your money. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't ask you to go and rob a bank.
No, I know you didn't ask me. Look, I want to, I'm not putting this on anybody.
You know, nothing on nobody. I did this on my own, you see? All on my own I did it. But I just want you to know something. I want you to know that I'm getting out of here. I'm getting a plane out of here. And I just wanted you to know it, that's all. And I wanted you to come down. And I wanted to just say goodbye to you here.
Well, goodbye, huh?
With Dog Day Afternoon, once again Pacino scored box office success. The actor was now a confirmed star, highly sought after by filmmakers and stalked by paparazzi. In just a few years, he'd become a reference, even a source of imitation.
Al Pacino. I look like Al Pacino. Yeah, cool. Al Pacino. Yeah. Al Pacino. Al Pacino. Attica, 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 Attica.
John Travolta, Sylvester Stallone, Robert De Niro, or Joe Pesci. A small group of Italian-American actors jumped into the breach that Al Pacino had opened and set out to conquer Hollywood. But Pacino didn't belong to any group. His celebrity isolated him. The explosion of his career had been too brutal. He was going from film to film at a frantic pace, running from role to role without respite, suffocated by his own success.
That's also another complicated issue with me, and that is what was satisfying to me was to be able to have something that I really cared about doing. It was vital to me, and it was a lifeline. It gave me hope. But success was something else. Success was always a feeling, it was fleeting, and that it was unusual, and that it was scary in a way.
Pacino sank into a spiral of depression. He drowned himself in alcohol. After several months, he agreed to enter rehab.
The Godfather, Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon. Now, Bobby Deerfield.
I just want to be with somebody, that's all.
In the summer of 1976, Pacino decided to leave New York in order to shoot a film in Europe with Sidney Pollack.
Magnetic, idolized, but alone. Moving in his own world, motivated by disaster, courted by death and women.
In Bobby Deerfield, Pacino played a famous racing driver who was going through a bout of depression. The actor had never played a character so close to himself, caught up in the same torments that he was experiencing in his own life. Things got even more confusing when Pacino fell in love with Mark Keller, who played his partner on screen. But Bobby Deerfield was a stinging failure which cruelly interrupted the series of great films in which Pacino had appeared since the beginning of his film career. During this period, he turned down Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven, Robert Benton's Kramer vs. Kramer, George Lucas's Star Wars, and Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Instead, he chose to play in a film inspired once again by a news item, a series of murders that had been targeting the gay community in New York. In Cruising, Pacino played an undercover cop, frequenting the city's gay S&M clubs. But even though he had fought to land the role, he looked uncomfortable in the film, which had raised a wave of protests. New York gays were unhappy with the way the film portrayed a violent and disparaging image of their community.
Hundreds of New York City homosexuals demonstrating against the movie Cruising, now being made in Greenwich Village. They took to the streets this week after Mayor Edward Koch refused to halt the production by revoking the city's permit to film. They have vowed to use nuisance tactics, civil disobedience, and possibly violence to force the movie company out of New York. Some of the bit actors say they were asked by the filmmakers to perform group sex and as a result have quit the film.
I saw something so despicable going on, people acting so sleazy, that I can't imagine people being too upset if one of us were killed. And that's the thing that really frightens me.
Cruising was another failure for Pacino, who still refuses to talk about the film, even today. Whereas several years earlier, he'd been able to embody the frenzy and unique intensity of New York and those on the margins, now he was no longer in tune with his city, as if he no longer felt its pulse. At the beginning of the 80s, Pacino was in the doldrums. He lost his friend John Cazale, who died from cancer at the age of 42. His mentor and father figure, Lee Strasberg, had just suffered a fatal heart attack. Three years earlier, the two men had starred in their last film together.
You know, Arnie, I don't know what I'd do if he goes. He's the only family I got.
He's very proud of you.
I'm a lawyer because of him. To you, being a lawyer was the finest thing you could be.
Lee Strasberg used to say, you learn the most from your failures. You just do. You know, so the idea is to do it all. You want to keep inventing, you want to keep not knowing. And that's how you learn.
With a project that he initiated, Al Pacino relaunched his career.
I was walking down Sunset Boulevard, and I saw the marquee. It says Scarface. Growing up, I had heard about Paul Muni and Scarface.
Now listen, you. What kind of mug you think I am? I don't know nothing. I don't see nothing. I don't hear nothing. When I do, I don't tell a cop. You understand?
This guy, Paul Muni, was inspiring to watch. I just wanted to imitate him.
Hey, come here. Look at that.
Pacino set out to remake Howard Hawks' 1932 film. But rather than a straightforward copy, the new Scarface was to be based on current events. The screenplay, written by Oliver Stone, was inspired by the explosion of drug trafficking from Latin America and the arrival on the Florida coast of thousands of Cuban refugees fleeing Fidel Castro's regime. Among them were criminals that Castro had released from prison, hoping in this way to create havoc with the American enemy.
I got the fucking Russian shoes, 20 feet coming through. How'd you like that? What do you want me to stay there and do nothing? Hey, I'm no fucking criminal, man. I'm no puta of a thief. I'm Tony Montana, a political prisoner from Cuba. And I want my fucking human right. Now, just like the president, Jimmy Carter says.
It was just a different kind of thing that I have ever done. I'd never quite thought of a character that way, from the outside too. Just starting with the scars, and of course the accent and the body and everything that went with it.
In Scarface, Pacino didn't follow the actor's studio method in his attempt to get to the truth of his character. His performance was highly theatrical, with long monologues, and deliberately over the top.
You're all a bunch of fucking assholes. You know why? You don't have the guts to be what you want to be. You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. So, what'll I make you? Good? You're not good. You just know how to hide, how to lie. Me, I don't have that problem. Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie. So say good night to the bad guy. Go on.
In Scarface, Al Pacino pushed beyond his own limits. He created a cult character and came up with his most extreme performance, the one that he considers his most accomplished.
Say hello to my little friend here. Say hello to my little friend here. Oh. Say hello to my little friend here. Say hello to my little friend.
In the 1980s, New York was changing, and so was American cinema. It was also the start of the blockbuster era, huge productions that attracted audiences by the millions. Pacino didn't feel comfortable in these types of films. He was over 40. He no longer had that juvenile look. After the box office failure of Revolution, a historical drama filmed in England, he stopped cinema for 4 years. When he returned to films, Pacino tried to reconnect the thread of his early career and to follow up or offer variations on some of his mythical roles. In Carlito's Way, his character was like a softened version of the one he played in Scarface. In Heat, he teamed up again with Robert De Niro, actually sharing a scene with him for the first time on camera.
So you never wanted a regular type life? The fuck is that? Barbecues and ball games? Yeah.
In Donnie Brasco, he once again took on the role of an Italian-American mafioso, but this time as a loser, a second-rate gangster.
In all the 5 boroughs, I'm known. Forget about it.
I'm known all over the fucking world.
Some of the dialogues in his new films directly quoted lines spoken by some of his old characters.
If he's allowed to go free, then something really wrong is going on.
Mr. Kirkland, you are out of order.
You're out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order.
Sir, you're out of order.
Out of order? I show you out of order. You don't know what out of order is, Mr. Trask. I'd show you, but I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too fucking blind. If I were the man I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place.
When you have a part that has an affliction in it, you see, you'll win an Oscar.
And the Oscar goes to Al Pacino in Setbacks.
After 7 Oscar nominations, Al Pacino finally received the Supreme Award. After giving the usual litany of thanks, he then talked about the place he'd grown up in.
Now, recently, a young girl came up to me. I was at a function for the South Bronx, which is where I'm from, and she said that I had encouraged her. And that's not necessarily by my work, but just by the fact that we came from the same place. And I just can't forget that girl. And I can't forget the kids out there who may be thinking tonight that if he can do it, I can do it. So this is really a proud and hopeful moment for me, because I want to thank the Academy for giving us a gift of encouragement. And this is a gift, a great gift to me. I thank you all, really. Thank you.
Pacino was now a film star at home with success. He put less of his real self into his characters. He preferred to use his fame to convey his undying love for theater.
You know Shakespeare? William Shakespeare? We're peddling him on the streets.
Saw Hamlet here recently.
You saw Hamlet? How did you feel about it? What did you see? It live? It's what?
It sucked. I saw it live down the street. Yeah.
He spent several years producing and directing a documentary on Shakespeare's Richard III. The film is both a lighthearted investigation and an ode to the craft of theater acting.
Now is the winter of our discontent. May glorious summer.
Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer. Our discontent made glorious summer. Anybody know what that means?
Since the end of the 1990s, Al Pacino has continued his screen acting tirelessly. He's still playing important roles, such as the investigative journalist Lowell Bergman in The Insider, or Roy Cohn, the lawyer diagnosed with AIDS in Angels in America.
Roy Cohn is not a homosexual. Roy Cohn is a heterosexual man, Henry, who fucks around with guys.
Well, I think I know who you are. Put it there.
In 2019, he once again created a stir, this time in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. and in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman.
I'm never going to retire now. Somebody can tell him that.
Jimmy, I did tell him. I told him over and over and
No,
over.
you told him. Then let's stop this then. Forget it. Enough. Let me enjoy my ice cream here.
Today, at over 80 years old, Al Pacino is set to star in 3 new films, and his passion for theater is undiminished.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Rehearsals tomorrow at 3.